Good evening, my friends. Although J.K. Rowling supports wokeness, she is very definite on her position on gender being absolute. Recently, Rowling raised the ire of the left by calling out Scottish police for allowing men who rape women to claim they're female if they decide to identify as transgender. She was very clear that this is backward. Why would anyone think it's a good idea to let convicted rapists in with their victims? How is that protecting their vulnerable victims? And the Scottish police don't even need proof of the claim. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling has insisted on an absolute stance on gender, blaming Scottish police for the treatment of a man who raped a woman. Police Scotland claimed that if the accused insisted he was a woman, they would record the rape as being committed by a woman, even if he had not legally changed his gender. Rowling commented on this in the journalistic language of Orwell's 1984, saying in a tweet, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." She went on to write that the biological male who raped you is claiming to be a woman. Her position provoked outrage from the woke crowd, but she doesn't seem to care much, which is the right way to feel about the woke mob. It defies all logic why anyone would think it is a good idea to put rapists in with the victims. How is this protecting the rights of women? If a man claims to be a transgender, would he actually even want a female? No, I think not. So is the claim real or just a subterfuge to get to more women? The sex-gender identification of individuals who come into contact with the police will be based on how they present or how they self-declare, which is consistent with the values of the organization. Detective Superintendent Phil Capaldi said, "Police Scotland requires no evidence or certification as proof of biological sex or gender identity other than a person's self-declaration unless it is pertinent to any investigation with which they are linked." Scottish authorities are prepared to cater to woke consciousness and hand over any gender identity to whoever they like. No questions asked. Does this once again give the impression that the supreme duty of government is now to protect criminals who conform to so-called wokeness, apart from our natural rights, including the right to life, liberty, property, and the right to be safe? And all of these are under the obscene power of the woke? And what do you think about all this? Please share your thoughts below. I really want to know what you think. The Democratic-controlled New York City Council passed a bill on Thursday that would allow about 800,000 non-citizens to vote in elections for mayor, city council members, and other municipal officials. They wouldn't be allowed to vote for president or members of Congress or in state elections that elect governors, judges, and legislators. The bill will go to Mayor Bill de Blasio. City Council Minority Leader Joseph Borelli, a Republican from Staten Island, said the measure will undoubtedly end up in court. He said the bill devalues citizenship, the standard by which the state constitution provides or allows the right to vote in New York State elections at all levels. In response to the unprecedented bill, Andrew McCarthy, a senior fellow at the National Review Institute and former chief assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, told Fox News that if non-citizens are allowed to vote in local elections, the results will be a weakening and ultimately stifling of voter freedom by making government more powerful. He said the Democratic Party is the party that promotes big government. If foreigners are allowed to vote and support Democrats, the government will become bigger and more powerful. And the bigger the government, the more it can stifle freedom, crowd our private investments, and kill a thriving society. Progressive Democrats are pushing for non-citizens voting in the hopes of solidifying a permanent Democratic majority. He pointed out that the benefit of non-citizen voting to the Democratic Party is that because of lower voter turnout, even if some of the non-citizens eligible to vote participate in local elections, it can have a significant impact on the outcome. At the same time, U.S. citizens' concerns about the Democratic Party's high crime rate, poor political performance, politicized schools, and high inflation would be diluted and diminished. In addition, if the population of Democratic cities grows, states may be entitled to more representation in Congress and thus more federal funding. The legislation could also open the door for non-citizens to run for local offices. McCarthy explained that a fundamental principle of the constitutional system is that lawmakers cannot amend the Constitution, but can only do so through constitutional amendments. If a legislature were to violate a provision of the Constitution, then all bills could not stand. Likewise, if it ignores the constitutional provisions on eligibility to vote and eligibility to serve, it will surely end up in court. He concludes that citizenship is fundamental to joining a national community that shares its benefits and burdens. So voting must be limited to citizens because voting is what determines the fate of the national community. These principles are fundamental to a functioning republic. Next year's House elections will be an uphill battle for both parties. Usually the first midterm election cycle of a president's term is more favorable to the party that loses ground. With President Biden's approval rating struggling, Republican Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin's victory in Virginia last month bodes well for a more favorable midterm election for Republicans next year. Former Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke is running for the Texas governorship next year after a 2020 presidential campaign and an expensive 2018 Senate race. But the open house seat in Texas's 15th congressional district will be particularly hotly contested and costly. The district will be the most competitive in the state after Republican lawmakers redrew the state's districts based on the latest census. Republican candidate Monica De La Cruz is running. She expects the Democrats to commit significant monetary resources to the district. Pelosi and AOC have been pouring a lot of money into Vicente Gonzalez's campaign this year because South Texas, where the 15th congressional district is located, is an awakening powerhouse. The GOP is also gearing up to spend big money in the district. The GOP Political Action Committee is backing women like Florida Representative Maria Salazar and Californian Young Kim, who switched their blue seats to red last year. De La Cruz is also listed as a supporter by the Republican Political Action Committee and the Republican Party's Young Guns program. The program is an effort by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and the National Republican Congressional Committee to support candidates who have a chance to flip blue districts. And now there's McAllen, Texas, which has a large Hispanic population and is the source of the illegal immigration disaster caused by Biden. As a result of Biden's far-left socialist policies, including inflation, key racial theories, education, and immigration, voters will flock to the polls. Hispanics are awakening to the fact that their values of faith, family, and freedom are more in keeping with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party, which has gone far to the left. Just after former CNN producer and host Chris Cuomo was accused of sexual misconduct in helping his brother, Governor Andrew Cuomo, another top CNN executive has been charged with child sex abuse. John Griffin, a senior producer on CNN's morning show New Day, was arrested by the FBI on Friday after a federal indictment accused him of coercing parents into allowing their underage daughters to engage in sexual activity at his home. An unsealed document provides specific details of the obscenity offenses allegedly committed by the senior CNN producer. According to the indictment, Griffin sent obscene text messages to the mother of the two girls aged 9 and 13. Griffin texted, "A woman is a woman, no matter how old she is," and the mother was urged to ensure that her 13-year-old daughter received proper training. A Vermont grand jury charged him with 3 counts of using an interstate commerce facility to entice a minor to engage in unlawful sexual activity. If convicted, he faces a minimum of 10 years in prison to a maximum of life on each count. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Vermont, the 44-year-old also attempted to lure 2 other children into sexual activity via the internet. In addition, Griffin proposed to the mother of an alleged 16-year-old daughter that she come to Griffin's Ludlow ski chalet in June 2020 for a little mother-daughter trip involving the children for sexual training. The document states that the evidence against Griffin is strong. According to the indictment, the federal government intends to seek forfeiture of Griffin's house, Tesla, a Mercedes-Benz, and other property such as computers and cameras used to commit the alleged crimes. An order for detention pending trial was submitted and signed by Judge Robert M. Spector. Colorado's Democratic Governor Jared Polis announced on Friday that the state's COVID-19 emergency is over and that he will not be implementing another statewide mask mandate in response to the spread of the Omicron variant. The state has given everyone enough opportunity to get vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, it's your choice. He will respect that. If people get sick at this point in time because they haven't been vaccinated, it's their own fault. He said he will still encourage everyone who has not been vaccinated to get protected. For those who have been vaccinated, make sure you get a booster after 6 months. The data suggests it's important and likely even more important with the Omicron variant. But while Polis said he supports local jurisdictions developing their own mandates based on their individual needs, the state should stay out of the way. The emergency has passed, and public health officials don't have the authority to tell people what they must wear, including masks. It's not their job. On the eve of the governor's announcement, several Denver area counties instituted new restrictions, including a vaccination or mask rule that would require businesses to mandate masks indoors or require customers to provide a passport of vaccination. Robert Destro is the former Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, and a professor of law at Catholic University of America's Columbus School of Law in Washington, D.C. He recently stated that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is committing at least 3 genocides in mainland China, aiming to eliminate Falun Gong followers, Uyghurs, and Tibetans. Destro said that although the Falun Gong spiritual group is not an ethnic group, the CCP has targeted the group's beliefs with a genocidal policy of destroying the group's reputation, bringing them down economically, and wiping them out physically. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual discipline that includes meditation exercises and moral education based on 3 core principles: truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Practitioners have been brutally persecuted by the CCP since 1999. Destro said that Falun Gong meditation brings people closer to Orthodox traditional Chinese culture. But in 1996 or 1997, the CCP's Ministry of State Security realized that Falun Gong practitioners in China might outnumber CCP members. By the late 1990s, Falun Gong had attracted some 70 million to 100 million followers in China, according to the estimates at the time. He believes there is no doubt that Falun Gong meets the definition of a religious group under U.S. law, and that if believers were persecuted in the U.S. as they are in China, everyone would rise to the occasion. In 2006, allegations emerged that the CCP was killing Falun Gong practitioners in order to sell their organs for transplants. Since then, numerous investigations have confirmed the gruesome details of such atrocities. Destro said that organ harvesting is a form of human trafficking and is an organized crime, but if it is done to eliminate a group of people, it becomes genocide. The Independent People's Tribunal, chaired by Sir Geoffrey Nice, concluded in 2019 that the Chinese Communist regime had for years been engaged in the mass forced harvesting of organs from prisoners of conscience, most of which originated from imprisoned Falun Gong followers. Destro said the persecution of Uyghurs in Xinjiang included taking them off the streets and putting them in concentration camps. Then they had to work as slave labor. Their organs are also being removed and sold. On December 9th, an Independent People's Tribunal called the Uyghur Tribunal ruled that the Chinese Communist regime had committed genocide against Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in the far western region of Xinjiang. The tribunal found that the CCP had implemented a deliberate, systematic, and concerted policy to reduce the Uyghur population in the region through a series of repressive acts, including mass detention, family separation, sterilization, and forced labor. The scope and depth of the CCP's devastation of the Uyghurs was incredibly brutal. According to Destro, the fate of the Uyghurs will be similar to that of Tibetans, whose culture has been the target of the Chinese Communist regime's effort to eliminate them. It is, he said, part of the definition of genocide. In 1950, the CCP took over Tibet, home to a historically distinct people with a unique Buddhist tradition. And since then, it has waged a campaign to strip the region and its people of their unique culture and religious heritage. To eradicate Tibetan culture, Destro said, the Communist Party has used population control, banned the teaching of the Tibetan language to children, and tried to control the training of Buddhist monks, as well as the succession and reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. Finally, Destro argued that the Western world would not engage in any cooperation with the CCP on organ transplant, nor should it consider separating business from human rights. Countries should avoid buying any products made with slave labor. And that's it for today, my friends. Check out the playlist right here for more eye-opening content. You can join me in the Eye Opener Telegram chat room and follow me on Newmaker, Gab, Parler, and Getter. Now, don't forget, please sign up to the email list so we can stay in touch. I'd like to thank you all, and I'll see you next time.